Learn about audio descriptions.
Hello, my name is Magan Harms. I have long gray hair and I'm wearing glasses. I have on a black dress with tiny white stars all over it. And today I'm using a virtual background with my contact information. And I'm with MindsEye. I'm the Arts and Culture Coordinator, and we provide audio description for individuals who are blind or visually impaired.
What do people enjoy about audio descriptions?
Some of the comments that we get from people, I'd say the number one thing we hear from AD patrons is that they feel included. We had a teenager who actually played in the high school pep band. So he went to every football game, every basketball game, but he never really knew what was going on the field or on the court. He was able to go to an audio described blues game, and he commented that he actually felt included. He could cheer in the moment that the Blues scored. He didn't have to wait for the cheers to start and then ask what happened and somebody to tell him. By that time, the moment is over. It's really great to see listeners pop up out of their seats the same time as every other person around them when something exciting happens. We also hear a lot that people can have shared experiences. Some people say, well, can't their spouse or their parent or their friend just lean over and tell them what's happening? And for a lot of people, that's what happens, much to the chagrin to the other audience members around them often. But we find that that person doing that is now essentially working a job. They're no longer there to enjoy a play or a musical, they're there to describe. We get comments often from the sighted siblings or spouses that how it's so great that not only do they not have to describe, but they can just have family time together. They can get into a car on the way home and everyone can discuss the play or the musical or the sporting event together. It's often reiterated to us that this is an essential service. Audio description isn't something that's nice to have or is a convenient add-on. It's essential to individuals who are blind or visually impaired to have the service provided.
How do you create audio descriptions?
How I create audio description. Preparation is key. Although the general idea of audio description is really simple, it's say what you see. It's not always actually that simple. You can only say what you see if you understand what you're looking at. If you walk into a theater and you've never seen a show before and you can't just start saying what you see, it'll probably be a mess. You don't know the characters. You don't know what the costume pieces are called or the props are. You don't even know if something you see now is going to be important later. So that's why preparation is so important. We're actually really lucky right now because we're able to watch videos of productions over and over again, whereas before we might get to see a show once, maybe. We use a script if we can get it. We can't always get it. And we can make notes on that if we can. Sometimes we can get the script, but can't actually make any notes on the script, so we have to write them separately. It's really helpful if we have additional information from the creative team and even the actors. For instance, what do you call that type of hat? Do you refer to this as the family room, the front room, the living room? So some questions are just really practical. And so the describer stays on the same page. You just stay in the moment of wherever this play or musical is set. Other questions are about intentions. Is this room bright yellow to convey sunshiny happiness? An important point about audio description is that describers don't mention intentions or feelings or emotions. This is just to inform us so we can better understand what we see before we say it. So we wouldn't say a happy sunshiny room, but we might say a room decorated in yellow with bright flowers and open windows. So it's the listener's job to decide if they think it's happy, just like a sighted person would. As sighted viewers, we're used to seeing these things and making a judgment as to what those decorations or colors or facial expressions mean. It's not the describer's job to explain to a patron that they should feel like something or they should think about something. We give them the information and they make those decisions themselves, just like a sighted person does.
Can you tell us more about how you prepare?
Back to how I prepare. In a perfect world, we'd get a reversal video, nothing fancy, just a wide angle video from one spot of the production that we can study. We note important cues or lines. One of the absolute key parts of AD is to never, unless absolutely necessary, never step on dialogue. So a lot of prep work comes in knowing where you have the space to say anything. If you only have a script and nothing else, it's really hard to prepare for that because it's just line, space, line, space, line, space. So you don't really know how long there's going to be a pause there. For a virtual performance, we're able to write a script, make sure the timing is right, practice. Then I go into the studio because MindsEye is also a radio station. So I go into the studio and work with Mike, who does our sound editing, and he works with me to record all of the descriptions and get them lined up properly and get the audio file ready. I also write and record pre-show introductory notes because there isn't normally time within a show to really describe all of the sets or the costumes. We provide a lot of that in the introductory notes. This is also when we read a lot of the program. So the synopsis, the cast, the director's notes, maybe, that really gives us an upper hand to be able to set up what the stage will look like when the curtains rise, who the first characters are, what their costumes are like. So those intro notes are really important.
How do you train audio describers?
At MindsEye, we have a team of volunteer describers. We recently switched to virtual training to try to keep growing during the pandemic. We got together for a couple days via Zoom and looked at a lot of examples and also did a lot of practice. This training also includes about learning about different types of visual impairments, and includes AD patrons who actually come and give us their feedback and tell us what they like about audio description. So we also have a Google Classroom it's designed just for our team, the MindsEye audio description team. And in the Google Classroom, I put resources and make up activities and quizzes because why have a classroom if you're not going to have activities and quizzes? So we also have, in addition to that, we have a private hidden Facebook group that's only for our AD team where we can ask each other questions and get opinions and feedback from each other. So training is ongoing. There's no such thing as being completely trained in audio description. It changes with the times, just like everything else. I go to every type of training, whether that's in person or now virtual that I can. I also listen to a lot of audio description.
How do you see the world around you differently?
I think the biggest way I see the world differently after being trained as an audio describer is I immediately notice if something is not accessible to individuals who are blind or visually impaired. If I'm watching TV and there's no audio description, sometimes even if something doesn't have audio description, you can still follow along. But if you're watching TV and there's a scene that's just a bunch of text messages and you just hear click, 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 there's no audio description, that's not accessible. It's terrible. Or I often go to webinars, and a lot of times a presenter will say, and here are some photos. And then there will just be silence or music playing. And that's definitely not accessible. So that's probably the biggest thing I notice. The other thing is I notice things that seem really hard to describe. I try to come up with words I might use. Sometimes I take pictures of things or screenshots of things so I can practice with them. Part of our Google Classroom is really just a bunch of YouTube links that don't have any audio description on them, but seem like would be really hard to do. So we should practice on them. And another thing is words. I'm constantly pausing movies to write down a great word that I can use later. I have an action verb list that I add to when I read something useful or when I hear something in a movie or a TV show. Simple present action verbs are a describer's best friend. They are like gold in audio description because they can say so much in such a short amount of time. So I'm always on the lookout for simple present action verbs.
What do you find challenging about audio description?
Things that are challenging for me personally are things like dance. It's really easy for me to fall into that trap of trying to name every single movement. And it's just not possible because you can't keep up, even if you are talking really fast, but it's also just not really enjoyable to listen to. So I've been participating in some audio description training specifically for dance and also opera. So much of audio description is just making judgment calls all of the time. What's more important at that moment, the note she hits or the movement she makes? Or is it the Italian words she's saying that aren't described anywhere? So it's all judgment calls. And I find that really hard. I don't have a background in dance, so that makes it really hard. Also, we described the Muni's virtual 2020 season, and there were some really amazing, awesome dance segments, and they were really, really hard for me to describe. I would spend hours on, 7 or 8 minute segments over and over and over, just trying to make it right. And sometimes I would do the whole thing and listen to it and think, oh my gosh, that's not at all giving the feeling that this dance is making me feel. So then I'd start over. I feel like next season I'll be better at it. We also provided for AD for Arts United, which was a benefit concert for St. Louis-based arts organizations. And there was this great, amazing segment by Circus Flora that was a man and a dog, and they were both acrobats. And that was really tough. I would listen back and think, oh, I wasn't clear enough, and it sounds like the dog is lifting the man or something.
How does audio description training cross over to other aspects of life?
Audio description training crosses over to so many aspects of a person's life. First, just communication and understanding. I absolutely 100% believe the key to being a good describer is having at least some sort of understanding as to what the patron wants to hear. We don't know that if we don't communicate with them. Along that lines is to not make assumptions. Don't assume a person sees complete darkness. Don't assume a person doesn't want to know colors. Don't assume a person can't make a connection in a plot without you telling them. So all that is really universal, and just trying to learn about someone's perspective. I don't currently know what it's like to be blind, but I can do the homework and try to understand better. So communication and understanding are basic parts of being a good human, and that translates to all aspects of life.
Watch Jacked, streaming with and without audio descriptions through March 31st. metroplays.org.